When I think about mapping out a vision plan for literally anything, I think back to the vision I had for my life at 16, and then 18, and then 21, and then 22. My vision changed drastically at each of those stages. What that series of modifications to my life's plan taught me is that the most important components of any vision plan are to work inevitable change and room to adapt into any plan for the future. I thought I would spend the time that I have with this speech elaborating on this point. First, I do like to give context, and any plan, in my opinion, does need a section for clarification and definitions. Second, I'll dive into my current vision plan. And third, I'll discuss the ways that we can all add space for change and flexibility into our vision plans. To define a vision plan, it's your North Star. A vision, it's not a strategy, it's a higher level thing than that. Your vision is an outline, your framework for the strategies and tactics that you implement to get where you want to go. And a vision is something that you can apply to your personal or your professional life. I spent the whole of my childhood thinking that I wanted to spend my professional life working with animals. I bounced from nature photographer to zoologist to veterinarian, and then I took the ACT. My math and science scores were in the mid to low 20s, and my English and reading scores were both 32. The top score you can get in an ACT in any section of the test is 36, so once you get past the upper 20s and work towards 36, it's considered a pretty good score. At this point, my parents sat me down and said that they were confident that I could successfully pursue and achieve whatever career I wanted for myself. Their concern was whether I was choosing to pursue studies that I wasn't really good at, and quite frankly didn't really enjoy, for no other reason than that I had always said I would. They were in my vision plan, so I kept working towards them. 20 minutes later, my dad and I were looking at schools that had reputable English faculty. Talk about a complete overhaul to my vision plan in 20 minutes. I would go through a series of other overhauls over the next 5 years. When I transitioned from a pursuit of publishing, I went to one publishing house for a visit, saw how cutthroat that industry is, and walked promptly towards another career path, to marketing, and then from marketing to the nonprofit world. I didn't even consider a nonprofit career a possibility until 4 months before I started my current work for the Salvation Army here in Rochester. That's how quickly your entire vision plan for your life can morph into something unrecognizable for what it was. I've spent the past 7 years with the same organization, and even that hasn't prevented a great deal of change to the vision plan. I went to work for the Army right out of college, thinking that I would be there for 2 to 3 years. And after less than 2 years, I was hired to head their community engagement development department. My boss unexpectedly took another position. I was 23. I was the youngest and most inexperienced person they had ever hired for the job. I drank right from the fire hose. I bothered and nagged all of my coworkers like crazy, trying to learn everything I possibly could about our programs, our services, and about best practices for community engagement and development. I didn't think I'd be at the Army for 5 years at that point. But a year and a half later, COVID-19 hit. And thank goodness I worked as hard as I did to get good at my job, because that's the reason that I remained job secure through a period of years when that kind of security was very rare. It was also invaluable because the first 2 years of the pandemic were a booming time for the nonprofit sector. Not only were more people in need, but communities across the country really stepped up to make sure that nonprofits could care for people. The generosity of people was beyond anything the nonprofit world had ever seen. And in the midst of all of that, my job was necessary. And now we've weathered the pandemic, and we're finally considering a capital campaign, something the Army has really needed for the past 10 years. Not only is working on a campaign like that a huge opportunity for me in my career, but I'm really excited about the prospect of seeing the Army through to a new era of services once a campaign is completed. There are lots of ifs in there, but there is one more area in which flexibility has to be worked into my plan for the future, including the hope that I'll be able to complete my master's by the time we start a campaign, so I can use that knowledge toward the campaign. Lots and lots of unknowns. Knowing all of that, I'm sure the questions swimming in your mind right now are something to do with how you plan for uncertainty. If you're not certain of what a change will be, how can you plan for it? How can you map that into your vision for the future? I would say there are two pieces of this, and they don't change whether your vision plan is for your personal life, your professional life, or a specific project. The first is to take advantage of low-hanging fruit. What are the obvious opportunity for change that will really impact your plan or you as a person? COVID was a big one. International war is a big one. The economy is a big one. Maybe it's the housing market. Maybe it's the challenge of hiring and keeping quality staff, an aging relative and the care they'll need, concerns about your own health, your kids going to college. Are you planning to have more kids? All of these things are possibilities in our futures. And while we can't say with certainty that any of them will impact us, we can build contingency plans into our larger vision plans to ensure that we've made provisions for these changes. The other component to building change into a plan is to make sure that the predictable components of our plan have enough flexibility to adapt to change when it arrives. For example, if your vision plan eventually involved moving to Washington, D.C., you need to ensure that your spouse's vision plan and the vision plan you have for your kids aligns with that end goal and timeline. You need to ensure that your housing situation would allow you to leave when you want to. You need to ensure that any obligations you have here in Rochester will still be taken care of when you no longer live here. This is one of many examples we could dive into, but it does give you a sense of how to ensure that the components of your life will allow you to move toward your vision as opposed to acting as a hindrance to it. Because the life you're currently leading was once your intended destination in a vision plan. I remember very vividly being 12 years old before any of this took place, sitting in the living room talking with my family, and my dad turning to me to say that he thought I would be very good at public relations. As a kid, I had no idea what that meant and completely disregarded the comment. It's ironic now that that is exactly where I've ended up. Seems a little crazy to me how things come full circle. And even though my current destination is not where I initially thought I would land, all of my vision planning along the way made it so much easier for me to get here. I hope this speech has helped you all to start mentally mapping out your own vision plans. And for my fellow type A personalities in the room, I hope I've successfully convinced you to begin building the possibility of change into your existing plans so that we all get to exactly where we want to go. Thank you all very much for your time. Madam Toastmaster, back to you.